Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about Initiate's Trial. The ninth, ninth book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series. Remember that, the ninth book. And the first of a whole new arc, Sword of the Canon, a duology of an arc. And this book is just straight up a disappointment on multiple levels for multiple reasons. Like it just fails. It just straight up fails for me as an installment, and I'll get into why in a bit. Like the choices of storyline that are used here, maybe they'll work for some people. They just straight up did not work for me. Anyway, what is this book about? Betrayed by an ally and hunted to ground, Ayrton has finally been captured by the Coriani. A bargain with the Fellowship on his behalf has managed to keep him alive to this point. But now he's been sprung free by a mysterious third party, and he's on the run. So the war for the soul of Aethera begins all over again. Simply put, like I really blasted through this book, but I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as any of the previous books. Like with no competition, this is absolutely the worst of the series to date. And let's get into it. First and foremost, remember this is the ninth book in the series. There's literally 2 books after this left to wrap things up. And what we get here is basically Ayrton entering his Jason Bourne era. When he flees from the Coriani, he has absolutely no memory of what he is. He's essentially thrust into an entirely new situation, entirely new characters, entirely new supporting cast, and he basically got the power nerf. Because after what we saw at the end, after the absolute peak that was Storm Fortress, like you expected things to really escalate at that point, especially given how that book ended. No, we get literally essential slap in the face and a reset right back to the beginning. Like this book is how you would think of most classic fantasy epic fantasy series started, with the whole farm boy call to arms trope. That's how this book rolls. So Ayrton has been essentially nerfed, reset to 0, whatever you want to call it, in this book, and he has no memory of who he is, and because of that, like I said, it loses a lot of the momentum, a lot of the tension that we had going into the series. Because the other major thing is that there's an absolutely massive time skip between Storm Fortress and this book. We're talking like centuries time skip. So we're dealing with an entirely new cast of characters. Nearly everyone we've enjoyed following in the previous books is dead and gone and past almost well beyond. They're not even memories at this point. They're stories to the point of legends and myths, because it's been so long. So it's a brand new setup, a very fresh setup, and then we have Ayrton basically blank slated and thrust into this. Okay, fine. Maybe that'll work for some people. Maybe it just doesn't work for me, because here's the thing. As to Ayrton's story in this book, we've now had 8 books where Ayrton has basically spent his entire... Are you fed up of reading Ayrton fleeing from the Alliance of Light and barely managing to stay ahead by the skin of his teeth? If you're fed up, I have bad news for you when it comes to this book. If you aren't fed up, good for you. Are you fed up of the Coriani basically being a Scooby-Doo villain who hatch these grand intricate plots, and they have all these moving pieces and this complex pattern and all of that, and then when the trap closes in the matter of a few paragraphs, Ayrton manages to slip by once again by the skin of his teeth, and the Coriani prime basically goes, gosh darn it, okay, next plan. If you're fed up of that, well, I have bad news for you when it comes to this book. If you're not, good for you. Like this book feels like where it comes to Ayrton's story in particular, in addition to blank slating him, this book brings nothing new to the table when it comes to his story. Like absolutely nothing new. At the end of Storm Fortress, a very exciting thing happened where his where it comes to his story and the future of his potential story. Like a very exciting thing that we've been waiting on, and that I've been waiting on at least. And then when this book starts, with the massive time skip that happens, everything that related to that particular character that was introduced literally at the very end of Storm Fortress happens off screen. Like we get a few lines to kind of flesh out what happened with them, how their story kind of played out, and that's it. Like that story wrapped up with a complete and utter whimper, and it was just such a massive disappointment. So yeah, that goes on. That being said, this book does there's a few other things that go on in this book besides the absolutely tiresome story of Arthur just doing what Arthur's been doing for like 8 books now. Like I said, we're introduced to our new cast of characters who interact in wholly new and different ways with Arthur, or not necessarily with Arthur, with Lysair, and they kind of help. In some ways they elevate the story, in others they just enforce that feeling that I have, that this is a reset almost right back to scratch when it comes to the series. So the first one I want to talk about is what's this guy's name? I completely forgot him. Terrence. Okay, so Terrence, think of the farm boy getting called to arms trope. That's Terrence. That's literally all you need to know about Terrence. Terrence is not matter beyond that, and like his story is very heavily intertwined with Arthur, even to the point where he gets because it's so late in the series that these initiating stories are happening. Because it's so late into the series, Janny actually had to make she had to do a hand wavy bit of magic to slap on to literally bring Terrence up to speed, to jumpstart his character, to get him to the point where he can actually go toe to toe, or actually be of any relevance, you can say, with literally everybody else who's of relevance in this playing field at this point. Because once again, this is 9 books in the series, and we're basically we're basically dealing with characters with the type of stories you would read in book 1. So yeah, yes, I know this is the first of a whole new arc, but like, as much as it's the first of a whole new arc, it is also the 9th book in the series to be doing these kind of storylines, while at the same time bringing nothing new to the table. That being said, there are some other fascinating, like that's pretty much the cons when it comes to this book, I should say. There are some things that did make it interesting to read. First and foremost, we get to see the way that Lysair's religion has developed, especially after the events of Storm Fortress and what happened with him there. So like that went in a really interesting direction, and it just reinforces how much of a Pandora's box it was when Lysair did what he did with creating a whole religion just to pursue a program against Arthur. Like, we see the consequences of that in this book, and not just against Arthur, but just the toll it takes on just the regular populace. So there's that. We have another major character who's introduced, Daliana, who was actually fun to read. Like, she's the descendant of one of the major POV's characters, whatever you want to call it, from Storm Fortress and from the Alliance of Light arc itself, and she gets a call to arms as well, but hers is just handled so much better. Instead of instead of the very tired farm boy call to arms that we get with Terrence, in her case, when she gets the call to arms, it's handled very differently. Her story is much more is handled with a bit more drama, a bit more intrigue, the things that she has to do, in the ways that she has to progress. In addition to that, she's very upfront about the fact that she's not equipped to deal with the situation that she's in, and we see that with her storyline. There's some things she's successful with, other things she fails, and it works. It really works for her. So she was engaging to read in that aspect. Like, she was at least different, as much as she got a very similar call to arms like what Terrence got. And then And then the third interesting thing about this book was just the what was the other point I had? Lysair. So this book finally answers the question for us of just how much of everything that's happened in the last 8 books, how much of it is Lysair's doing, how much of it is him waking up and choosing evil, and how much of it is the influence of the Geash. And that's a question that gets definitively answered here from Lysair's own perspective, which is not just someone assuming, it's his own words. And it pretty much confirms something I've been saying for a few, when I make these videos for a few books now. At the same time, it does it in a way that, yes, it confirms one of my suspicions when it comes to him, but it also does it in a backhanded way, where even though he acknowledges where he basically confirms my theory, it's also not necessarily the way that I kind of portrayed it. So like that was by itself was fascinating to read, especially as you see him as things begin to ramp up against Arthur, and you see him begin to have to go down this road all over again. But once again, influenced by the events at the end of Storm Fortress, it's handled very differently. It's handled very in a way that makes Lysair that much more relatable and much more likable as a person compared to any of the past 5 books. So as to the overall events of this book, frankly, it feels like a book that brings just nothing new to the table. Yeah, maybe this is meant to be a setup book, and everything juicy is going to happen in the next book, Destiny's Conflict. But honestly, given the massive page count we have here, for this book to just literally just do what's being done to death for so many books previously, it wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough. Combined with the fact that we have returned to very basic storylines, very initial storylines, and it's something that's acknowledged and dealt with in the way that Janny has to literally do. She literally had to insert plot points to be able to have at least one character who was introduced at this very basic level get up to speed to be able to actually function with regards to the other cast members who've been around for all events of the previous books. So because of all of that, it just doesn't work. There's nothing wrong with this book being the start of a whole new arc. This book almost reads like the start of an entirely new series, which is a whole other thing. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work this late in the series. Not for me, at least. This should have been handled better, I think. That being said, that's the story that we got. After reading this, and being so utterly disappointed with it, I popped onto the Discord where I've been chatting about these books, and lo and behold, I'm not the only one who feels this way. Even looking at the Goodreads reviews and whatever, this was a bad move to make this late in the series. It really, especially coming off of a book that was as intense and exciting as Storm Fortress, it really, really killed the momentum going forward. After reading this book, this is the first time after reading the Wars and Light and Shadow book, I just had no interest in going on to the next one. It's been a few days now since I finished reading Initiate's Trial, and I have no idea when I'm going to go and pick up Destiny's Conflict. I just don't care at this point with what's going to happen here. This book just succeeded in absolutely killing my mood when it comes to this series. It's that badly handled. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell a book that brings. It feels like it brings nothing new to the table. It resets everything to zero. It starts up things it just deals with things in a very disappointed way for a book that's so late in the series. At this point, you would expect an installment that is beginning to ramp up towards the end of a series to begin to escalate the tension and the excitement and that kind of thing. Not this, not a almost greenfield reset, which is what we get. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Initiate's Trial. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.